So hi and welcome to this session of In Therapy Unpacked with me, Anna Duschinsky. I've been working with Alex for over 20 years and we have developed the therapeutic coaching modality together. So what I'm doing in these sessions is to help to literally unpack, make sense of the way in which Alex is working so that you can get the most out of the sessions and really see behind the veil of what we're actually doing in this work. In this session, we will be looking at pool session 4 of In Therapy with Alex Howard. Please note that these sessions do include themes of loss, trauma, and suicide.
We begin this episode talking about how Paul has been doing since that breakthrough session in the woods.
I came out of there really feeling great. So honestly, I was like euphoric. But it didn't last very long. I found myself getting fucking angry. A lot more angry than I would normally. Over stupid shit. Really stupid shit. And a few people got it in the neck. And then I had to apologise, and because I'm very much aware of if I do let off the handle, there's no excuse for my actions. I've got to apologise and try and explain to people that I've got all these feelings and this anger coming up. But been an interesting 10, 11 days.
To give you a little bit of context on what I think is happening. So I think the initial euphoria is partly just the moving of a lot of trapped energy, getting space. But also I think it can be the euphoria of knowing you did something that was really scary and really hard to do. And like, fuck, I did that. I think there were, I think, quite a few moments where you're like, I can't go there. I don't know what you're asking for. I can't do it anyway. I don't want to do it. And the fact that you found your way through that is a sense of, fuck, wow, if I did that, what does that mean? But then I think what's been happening as a follow-on from that is what we want to have happen, but I think it's important we give some context around it. We all walk around our life with a big black sack full of unprocessed emotion. Things that have happened that we didn't process at the time, things we didn't know how to process, emotions that maybe we thought weren't acceptable to feel. And for most of us, the lid's pretty tight on that. And every so often it opens a little bit and a bit comes out and it goes back in again. And part of what we were doing together in our session in the woods was we opened it up. And that's why it surprised you what came out and the content.
The way I would look at that, my analogy would be my Pandora's box has been opened, all the other shit's flown out, all the really nasty stuff. But there's still a load of stuff in there. And what you've done, I've picked them out and brought them out the box. It's like, oh, okay, what the fuck do we do with these? Because it's like, I don't know what you want from me. And it's like, okay, I've got to go and pick that one up now. That's how I see it. Like, I've picked it up. Now what the fuck do I do with it? And then we dealt with it. And then, okay, there's not much left in there now, to be honest with you. And I can rummage around in it. And okay, there's one or two little things that might be like a horror spider in the corner, but there's nothing in there that bothers me anymore, which is a good thing,
And I think then what's happening, the reason why I find with people an experience like you had is important is for two reasons. One, it's the thing we work with. But of course, we didn't go in with, let's work on your relationship with your dad. We went into, let's see what's there. But it's also what you learn from the experience. Because for a lasting change with your emotions, it's really important that we don't just pack it all back into Pandora's box, but also we're not, as I know you know, and I appreciate the sensitivity of how you described it, this is not about, great, we'll just fucking let everyone have it then. You still need to treat people, as you know, with kindness, with care and with respect. But in the past, there were two choices. Repress it in Pandora's box or throw it at other people. And what you're learning to do is a new way of being with it, which is actually to let yourself have the feelings. And that might mean that you're crying and you're devastatingly sad for a while about something, or you're just fucking on fire with anger about something for a while. But if you give it space and you stay with it, it will also move through. And it's like a wave that comes. And rather than you fighting it, you're letting it move through, your body and through your experience.
So what's interesting here, a couple of pieces. One is the difference between a moment of transformation and more sustainable change. Paul has had a moment of shift and it felt great temporarily, but then actually off the back of that, there's been quite a lot of emotion that's surfacing. What Alex is framing is that is actually because he's taken the lid off the box, he's allowed a lot more through, and therefore there's a lot more energy and movement of emotion that's going to be happening. More anger, more sadness. The key here is that what Alex and Paul have done together over the series of sessions is to hopefully give Paul the tools to be able to manage those emotions and understand and have a new relationship to those emotions, which he can take with himself for life. And that's going to be the genuine change. So yes, that dramatic moment of shift and release is important, but it's almost not as important as that continuation of Paul's shift in his relationship to how he feels and experiences his emotions day to day.
This morning I woke up quite tearful this morning. There was a specific thing that happened with my father when I was younger. And I must have been about 12, 13 because I was coming into that stage where I got quite rebellious. And I called my stepmother a fucking fat slag. And he pinned me against the wall and he said, "Don't you call your mother a fat slag." And I went, "She ain't my fucking mother." And that moment, I knew I effectively lost him. He was committed to her. And I was quite tearful about it. Yeah. And I was thinking, what am I tearful? And I remembered the session we did with the young, inner child underneath the table. And I was asking myself the question, what's going on here? And I imagined me walking in the room where he was pinning me up against the wall, and I just dragged myself out, put him in the car, drove him around, showing him his life, what was going to happen. Ain't going to be fucking easy, I was telling him, ain't going to be easy, but I've got your fucking back. Don't worry about it. It's all right. You haven't got to rely on these people. And I just pulled him in, gave him a cuddle, and I was sobbing.
So really, really key moment here from two perspectives. One is the recognition that as we allow more through, there's going to be memories that surface. And that's something to be aware of, I think, in our own process, also as we're working with people, that when we support them to become more in touch with their emotions, to become more allowing of that, more memories will, by definition, be surfacing, more emotions will be surfacing. If, as Paul is describing here, we've done the work, we've created the scaffolding, we've supported our client to build the resources and the know-how, what we will end up with is a client who knows how to navigate that. And that's exactly what Paul's just described. If we think back to that little boy under the table in those early sessions, his description that, that's where he's kept his inner child, essentially shoved away somewhere. Instead, now, as he recognizes the memory that's arising, he is able to essentially reparent himself, step into his own memory, guide, support, father, encourage, hug his younger self. And this is, as Alex will reference shortly, something that's incredibly powerful as a practitioner to recognize that your client is able to look after themselves, to parent themselves, to care for their own emotional well-being in such a resourceful, incredible way.
Even though it was all quite sad this morning, I'm glad I went through that process of looking after that lad and saying everything's going to be all right. And in a way, you've given me them skills to be able to deal with stuff like that. Because obviously, there's going to possibly stuff come up.
Well, as we talked about last time, Pandora's box is not empty.
No.
Right? So there's more that's going to come up. What is really touching to me is how you responded to it. Because that stuff will have tried to come up lots of times in the past. Because It's there and it needs to be processed. But historically, your response would have been to try and reframe it into a positive, or just to go and get busy, or to sort of numb out. And the fact that you responded to it in the way that you did is all that I can hope for in terms of the work that we're doing, because your inner healing and transformation is not primarily what happens in these two chairs. It's what happens in the time outside of our work together. What happens here is hopefully learning the frameworks and the strategies and the ways to respond differently. But what you just described is a perfect example of that, responding differently.
I love what Alex is saying here. It absolutely encapsulates the way that we work in therapeutic coaching. Yes, the work that happens between the chairs, in the room is important, lays the groundwork, is where some of these realizations happen, where actually we take a lot of this work from being kind of unconscious to being something that we're conscious of, that we can consciously work with, developing the skills to navigate. Actually, the real work then happens when the client walks out of the session and is dealing with themselves and the people around them day in, day out. And that really, the proof is in the pudding. If it's working well, then actually the client's way of navigating their world and their relationship to self really shifts.
And also, while I was sitting there this morning, I was looking at the video that I originally sent in. I actually want to go through this process and come out the other side whole, because I feel at the moment I'm in bits. I'm broken. I remember shooting it, and I remember not thinking, I'm not going to fucking send this in. I didn't even edit it. I didn't even look at it. I just shot it and sent it off. And looking back at that, all I can say is that the feelings I had then, I certainly haven't got now. That I felt broken. I felt, I couldn't move on, or I didn't want to move on. I wanted to process, and that's. I feel that I've sort of achieved that. It seems to be a purpose to things, which is good. Yeah,
and I think your relationship to your feelings and emotions has also significantly shifted and changed. Just what you described in terms of what happened this morning, that emotions came up and you were allowed to not just let them be there, but also track what the origins were and what was going on, and to actually support the little boy in the way that he needed. So then, again, what that shows us is it's not just you had some powerful experiences, but for me, far more importantly, you've learned and integrated a different way of responding to what's happening.
I think that I mentioned this right at the beginning. I didn't feel I mattered as a child, and I felt I mattered this morning. I mattered enough to go back and say, look, I've got your back. And the great thing about me is I'm very strong.
And also, although it's not how it necessarily always feels, you aren't the needy, dependent little boy anymore. And so you have the resources of the man that you've become. You've become the father that he needed. And what you've been learning to do through this process is to be that father for him.
Wow, that's interesting. Yeah, so if I look at the way I am as a father, and having a father like me,
not bad,
I like that.
Take one of those, wouldn't you?
Yeah, no, I'll take that one. I'll take that one. Yeah.
Again, and I've referenced this before, one of our biggest learnings through therapeutic coaching is if we're mentally and emotionally basically well, we will have found a way to connect to the resources that we lacked at an earlier point in our life. Whatever it is that we didn't get, we will have found a way to create it in our lives. What we often don't know how to do is join the dots. In other words, he's become a brilliant parent, but he doesn't know how to self-parent. What's really interesting here, though, is that if Alex had just said that to him, session 1, it might have landed a bit. But because they've been on this journey together, because he has experienced these levels of shift and change, brought so much of what was unconscious into conscious awareness, navigated his way through these feelings, Paul is really ready to recognize that now and to feel what it feels like to be his own best father, in essence.
So it feels to me that we're moving towards a point of completion of work. No, sorry, it's not completion of work. These continue forever.
I know what you mean.
But it's completion of our work around some of these pieces. But for me, there's still a piece that I would like us to explore, which is Zoey.
So again, really interesting, that kind of navigating of the process together, which Alex does all the way through. This is where we are. This is what we've done. This is where we are together. And actually, that's really important as you benchmark, as you go through a series of sessions, that sense of kind of what I call recontracting is constantly happening. It keeps you, client, practitioner, together on that journey. It's a shared process and a shared dance that way. Also really important as we come towards the end of a set of sessions with someone to reflect on where we've come from, where we are together, and perhaps any last pieces. But what is really important there as well is that there is a frame that this piece, this journey they're on together, not that all the work that Paul will do forever is not going to be ongoing, because we know that it is for all of us, but that their journey together is coming to an end. That's an important thing to be stating out loud in terms of the rapport and the relationship between them. It also gives Paul the chance to be okay with that, to air anything that he needs through this process. So just that sentence is important in terms of the dynamic, but also gives Alex the ability together to point out a piece that he still sees that perhaps they need to explore together.
Because interestingly, it's because of Zoey that you came to this process. But actually, if you were to count the hours of time that we've spent together, it's actually a relatively small amount of that time, what we talked about Zoey. And I think that was right, because a lot of what was important in the context of Zoey was your childhood and how that shaped you and how that set you up.
The way that Paul was able or unable to process what's happened with Zoey is based on how he had learned to navigate and to respond to his emotions overall. And that was very much shaped by his childhood. So interesting, isn't it? Because we think that we're dealing with now, and of course we are dealing with the now, what's happened, and obviously the tragic loss that he suffered. The reality is, though, that the groundwork for how he's responding to that, his belief systems, his patterns, strategies of dealing with that grief now, that loss now, are actually all been set up for decades. And that very often is where we need to go, which is, again, why that kind of modeling of, within therapeutic coaching, the past, the present, and the future as this kind of axis that we need to navigate. We start with the present. We're always aiming to start and focus with what's arriving in the now. Our aim is always focused on how we create the future that we want. But in order to do that, we need to look at what's shaping our responses to the now. And that almost always lies in our past. So interestingly, with something as dramatic as what Paul's experienced, you would expect perhaps more of the work that they've done to date to be about that. But actually what needed to be resolved, what needed to be healed, were the strategies and belief systems that Paul has carried since he was a very young child.
One of the things that's been sat in my mind for a little while in the work that we've been doing together, particularly since I read Zoey's letter after our first session, was that I found myself wondering, and this is really, it's a question to you, but wondering how I would feel receiving a letter like that without being able to reply. And where I'm going to give you where I'm going with this, and you can tell me if it's a helpful thing or not. But what I found myself wondering is, would it be a helpful part of your healing process to be able to write your reply to that letter?
Don't do that. It's a good idea.
I wonder about a letter to your mum as well.
Yeah, that would be very touching. That'd be quite a long letter, I think.
And it's not like it has to be one letter. And, it might be something you do a number of times in different ways. But I think particularly at this point, as we come close to a point of completion of the work that we're doing and the journey that you've been on with your own heart and with your own emotions, and to be able to write from a place that is integrating of that. And I think it would also help the integration of that.
Yeah. So I've got a bit of work to do.
Got a little bit of homework.
Yeah.
It's interesting that there are a few tools and techniques that Alex has employed here that aren't just about sitting, across from each other in chairs and talking. Obviously, as we referenced in the previous session, we're not expecting or encouraging people to go out and take their clients into the woods, but that ability to think differently, think about how we empower our client to feel their emotions, to go on the journey they need to go on. And that flexibility of approach. In a way, for Paul, what's been important is the symbolism of the tree, the symbolism of the space to run, for example, have been actually really quite powerful for him. He's someone who is very symbolic. He comes up with a lot of metaphors and imagery, and therefore that way of working with him has been very, very powerful. And here, the idea of being able to write a letter, to be able to respond, to be able to have a conversation with someone. There are various ways that we could do that, and that we do that within a kind of therapeutic coaching toolkit. But this is one of them that Alex is employing here is, what would it be like if you were to write a letter to that person in your life? What would it be like if you were to find a way to talk to them, to respond to them, to engage in that conversation, even after that person has passed away? And the power of that in terms of Paul's voice, which of course he wasn't given, particularly as a young child. So what's interesting is that creativity of approach, something Alex and I touched on in the last session, that we aren't just fixed on having a conversation, on talking therapy, but there is this kind of space and this flexibility of the way that we work with our client based on what they need.
It's been a little while since my last session, and I've noticed a marked difference, and even the people that are close to me say, oh wow, I've improved massively from where I was. I just can cope with things, and a lot of them sort of old demons are gone, really. It's been tough writing the letters that Alex has asked me to do. Really tough. I wrote them once and I've rewritten them. It's interesting because I did actually write a letter to Zoey probably about a month after she passed, and it's a very different letter now. Very different letter. Laurie in the background. So yeah, that's been a bit tough writing them letters. It's going to be really hard reading them out. I'm not looking forward to that. I don't know if I'll be able to contain myself, whether I'll be just in bits, and that's going to be hard. So I'm not looking forward to seeing Alex on Friday. Sorry, Alex.
Interesting to see how far Paul can recognise he's come. It's something that is important, I think, in the work that we do with clients, is to benchmark those shifts. We often notice how easily people normalise all the good stuff. And so getting that reference from people around you, to have that feedback and to directly ask the question. Interesting as well, seeing Paul reference the video that he watched where he submitted that originally to be part of the In Therapy sessions. Those ways of referencing back to where we were and how far we've come can be really powerful, because otherwise it can be easy for us just to focus on maybe what's not yet resolved, the pieces left in the box, as opposed to the pieces that have shifted and changed. And so it's beautiful to see that awareness with Paul here as well, and an important piece as a practitioner to make sure that we reinforce that, ask that question of our client. So obviously here what Alex is going to ask Paul to do is on film to read the letters that he's written, both to his daughter Zoey and to his mum, and to read them at the graveside. Clearly that may not be what you would typically do as a practitioner, you might just ask the client to write the letter, to reflect with you on the letter, maybe to read you the letter if you wanted to or they wanted to. So we'll watch these pieces together. I might give a couple of comments, and then we'll talk about how these are a kind of finishing piece, a final sort of jigsaw piece, really, in the journey that Alex and Paul have taken together.
All right. You want to do it?
Yeah. You all right, baby girl? I miss you so much. I know you can hear me. I know you can. Sometimes I'll sit on the bench. Sometimes I'll tend to your garden. Sometimes we'll have a brief chat. But it does give me a great deal of solace coming up here. I just feel at peace here. I must be honest with you though, this has been far harder than I ever imagined. It rocked me to the core, babe. Pain's immense. And there's many times I felt like joining you. The good news is I'm past that now. I know you wouldn't want me to anyway. I know you wouldn't. And I'm sorry if you feel I'm not held up as much as you have hoped, but it's just the way it is, babe. I need you to know something, right? It's important. I'm gonna be okay. I'm gonna be all right. I found it harder because I thought I'd got through to you over the last 10 days of your life. That was a super precious time for me. I know if you had to give me an inclination of what you was going to do, I wouldn't have let you out my sight. I felt so foolish. I didn't realise that you blagged me. I had no idea. You have no idea what it did to me. Honestly, that was really tough. I know logically it was for the best, as if, it allowed you to pass peacefully. And I get that. I do get that, because I would have hated if it was fraught. I do accept your apology, and please forgive me for being angry with you. I screamed for days, girl. Days. I just kept on saying to myself, how could I have missed it? But enough of that. I decided to allow your passing and grief to stay with me for a while. I refused to bury it. I let it flow, which is unlike me. It was hard, as it brought up a lot of past trauma, and that was brutally hard to deal with. And I've been very fortunate because I've managed to get help and I've had some therapy. And this has helped me massively. And as you know from my previous letter, I had not been handling it well. But as you said to me in your words in your letter to me, if anyone can take a shit situation and turn it into something worth fighting for, it's your dad. And I'm in a better place now and I'll be able to move forward with that. And I will do this. I'm going to take my time on this. I usually just jump in there. I work it out as I go along. But this is important. I've had a lot of work to do to be able to move on with my feelings. Mum's death has surfaced. And hopefully you found each other. She would have been so proud of you. I can see light at the end of the tunnel now, though. That's the good thing. Therapy has helped me heal those old wounds. And my inner child that was desperate for attention. So in a backward way, you've inadvertently helped me, and it's typical of your dad to find something positive in something so tragic. I've got some really good ideas of what I'm working on. Up until now, I've not been super committed, but it's time to move on now and stop the self-pity. I'm not talking about your passing here, but my past. I've allowed it to stop me doing things, and I'll no longer tolerate that. I'll be popping in a couple of times a week, and I can feel you in my progress. It's going to be awesome, I promise you that. I'm going to go now, babe. I miss you loads. Love, Dad.
How do you feel her right now?
I'm miss her. Yeah, I was a little bit apprehensive about writing about she'd blagged me, but that was the first thing out of my mouth. She blagged me.
Yeah.
I was angry with her,
Yeah.
as well as devastated, but I was angry with her.
But as we talked about, that anger is okay. Feeling angry doesn't mean that you don't love her. It doesn't mean that you don't miss her. It's just you also, and that's part of being in loving, intimate relationship. It's not always just cuddles and love and easy. It's also the hard stuff as well. And I think it's really important that she knows that you're okay. And I want her to know that you are okay. Because for her to really, truly be at peace, it's knowing that you are okay.
She knows it.
So what's important, I think, is Alex's presence here with him, that there's a support, much like in the session in the woods as well. Also really touching to hear Paul say to his daughter that he's okay. And in a way, what you're seeing in the letter is that journey, is the integration, is where he's come from. The devastation, the anger, the emotion that he's processed, his ability to speak that outright now, but also his sense of being able to let her know that he's going to be okay. And also the beginnings of a sense of where he can take this.
Hello, Mum. It's taken me a few attempts to write this letter, as it dawns on me only this morning why I've been having problems writing it. It's been a long... I've been going through a therapeutic process, dealing with my past traumas. As you know, Zoe's passing was hard on me, and it brought some old stuff back up that's been sticking around. Reason for that is I was too young to understand, and I suppressed all the feelings. Having gone through therapy, it's helped me heal that little Paulie who resided under Nan's table, you know the one. There are many times during my childhood I didn't deal with the situation well. My coping mechanism has helped me forge who I am today. But it would also regularly pull me back, as you know, to hinder any progress that I made. And that got me thinking this morning. I've never had a problem writing to you before, but writing today is from a different place. I'm a man now, Mum, and I'm no longer that hurt little Paulie. I built a great life for myself. I have a strong, tight-knit, close family around me, forged by my own experiences and values that I'd learned from them tragic and traumatic experiences I've had. And again, another reason for the hesitation is I know I've moved on, and talking to you from this position as your son and not your little boy is hard to let go of. But I know I am now. I'm ready to let go of it. It's time to let go of that sad story that's been held so tight. I'm no longer hurting. But coming from this place is a wonderful connection with you, and one where I can move through the grief of yours and Zoe's passing. I love you and I miss you dearly. That will never change, never. It's just how I process the whole thing has changed. So for now, my dearest mother, bye-bye. But don't forget, I love you. Paul.
What's that?
The irony in Zoe's passing is in a way had to happen in order for me to heal, because I probably wouldn't have done it before, because no one would have got close. No, this has allowed me to say, well, no. I can move on with my life.
what we're looking at here is this journey of integration. We can only achieve integration by being able to be sufficiently resourced now with the resources that we have around us, that we can revisit the past, not to go back into it, reassociate, re-traumatize ourselves, but to revisit it and take new meaning from it. The meaning he's taking is that actually, having been able to work through those emotions, he doesn't need to carry that old story. He can emerge as the aligned, whole man that he is, without this piece of him constantly being held in the background. And the power of that is that we reclaim our whole self. We reclaim our wholeness. And he's able to move on to have his relationship with his mum now be that of a healed, integrated adult.
Not from her.
Yeah, no, I understand.
From the past.
And of course, that is the gift of her passing. It's not that you wouldn't do anything to change it. But the truth is, you know that you can't change what happened, but you can choose what you make it mean and what you do with what happens.
I think that's the key thing. Yes, we often come to a point where the crisis breaks us open. And as you say, as Paul says, it's the only thing that would really have allowed him to kind of review and change that past. That doesn't mean that he wouldn't give anything for that not to be the case, that not to have happened. But that we then have choices as to how we deal with it. And that is the gift of this work for him.
That view really represents my flexibility. Whereas before it was always littered with non-coping mechanisms and running down rabbit holes and diversions. New dawn.
Yeah.
Thanks, mate.
You're welcome.
Thank you very much.
It's just the beginning.
It feels like I've learned to be again, learned to walk, learned to understand all these emotions and feelings that came up but were so overwhelming at the time. And someone's there holding your hand saying, okay, what about this? And talking me through. And that journey that he took me on was rehabilitation. That's what it feels like, rehabilitation. Back into the, we're going to push you in, get you to where you need to be, and then, okay, we're here now. I can let go of you, and you can carry on.
If we've done our job right, that's exactly what happens. That actually the client doesn't have to be in therapy for years. The client can step away, having gone through that journey, and take those tools, integrate those tools into their lives. That's when it's worked. I hope it's been a really interesting journey for you to come with me as we've reviewed these sessions of In Therapy with Alex and Paul. And I hope that I've been able to add a little clarity, a little more depth, and perhaps bring your awareness to some of the nuances of what's happening, kind of a layer beneath what's obvious in the work that Alex is doing with Paul. If you are enjoying understanding more about therapeutic coaching, the model, how we work, and you'd like to dive deeper, you'd like to know more, please do go to therapeuticcoaching.com. You can book a discovery call with us, talk to us about the course or about the model, and find out more. And I really look forward to seeing you in future episodes of In Therapy Unpacked. Thanks.